Okay, we got the live stream running, and my name's Moshe, and I'm here in Israel in the Galilee, where I've lived for a long time, and we got the live stream. So what we're going to talk about today is update on what's new about the war against Iran. Possible maybe reason why there was a little delay in this, but I don't think so. People are saying the storm delayed the war, but I don't think so. And we're going to talk about the updates, and we're going to talk about when it looks like the war will start, which is likely by next weekend, by this coming weekend. And that's what we're picking up in Israel. Okay. And we're going to get into that, and we're going to talk about how quickly and easily it could spread and likely will spread. And Bible prophecy seems to indicate something really, really bad happens to Iran. Okay, so bad that they have to evacuate the country and they get scattered to all the other countries in the world where the sword follows them and they get cut off. And I don't believe this ever happened in the past. Now, Iran, Elam, as it's called in Jeremiah 49, would most likely include Iraq. And to give a little backup to that, we see that Iraq has a drought like Iran and is an ally of theirs and has a lot of weapons from them and is likely going to join them in the fight, as will the Houthis. So that's, I would say, interesting. Okay. Let me go into the live stream and see what we got going on there. And then we're going to have a little fun. We're going to have a little fun after that. Okay. Let's see, where am I here? And I don't want to be there. I want to be here. Okay. And then I want to go here. And it looks like we got a live stream. We're going to have a little fun after that. Okay. Let's see, where am I here? Looks like we got a good live stream. Okay. Not a lot of people are going to come in today.
Good. No.
People come in when they, they might come in. I don't know. We'll see. Let me put my, we might do okay today. Let me put my post up and we'll get going. People come in when they, they might come in. I don't know. We'll see. Get it lower. Let me put my, all right, we got that done. Now, being a Bible-believing site, all the New Testament will do some praise. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 All right. So there is a theory flying around that I don't think is valid. And it's saying, oh, the reason the war is delayed, the war against Iran from America, is because all the bad weather in America stopped the transfer of weapons. And no, the transfer of weapons was continuing, I believe, and is still continuing. Anyway, the most of the bad stuff in the weather, from reports I got from people in America, is that it's over, except there's still cold weather. Now, there's probably leftover snow and ice, so it's not that much over. You got to be careful when there's snow on the top and ice on the bottom. It's very treacherous. You don't know what you're stepping on, you know. The only thing that I think really would help in stuff like that is you get yourself some winter boots that come up around the ankle, or higher if you want, 8 or 10 inches, with a very heavy, vibrant sole for snow and ice. And that probably will give you more grip than anything I know of. But it's not spikes. It doesn't have metal or plastic that goes and pierces, but you get more traction out of that than you probably will from a lot of other things, I guess. They're pretty costly and they're very heavy and they look clunky. You could get cowboy boots with Vibram soles that I don't know which Vibram sole they put on it, but it's probably something that's chemically resistant, so you could walk around on a farm with various noxious things in the mud. So anyway, I think it's over, but now the temperatures are low and there's not that many people lost their electricity, but I think about 800,000, and that's unfortunate. With cold weather, that's really a bad thing to suffer from. One thing you can do is they got electric heaters, and you could rig it up to charge in your car off the cigarette lighter or off a USB in the car. And if you keep the car gassed up, you could just run the motor in the car, charge the car battery and stuff like that. Got to be very careful that you don't run your car battery down and then you can't start, because your car battery is going to be weak in cold weather. So you got to watch yourself very carefully. If you got a garage, you still have the risk, but it's much less. So I guess we pray for all the true believers, and none of our people suffered that. I mean, they were very uncomfortable, but nobody got raked over the coals from the weather or anything. Okay, so you got a cold spell. Now we're coming out of our weather. We're supposed to hit 70 today, but the house is still cold as all get up. So I'm running the heater, and if it hits 70 3 days in a row, the house will warm up. 4 days, it'll be okay. But it takes quite a few days to warm the house up. So I'm sitting here in front of the heater drinking hot soup. All right. Trump's not talk. Okay, a lot of airlines are canceling not flights to Israel. They're canceling flights over the Red Sea because they're afraid of the Houthis and going to Iran. Iran put some sort of alert. I'll find it in my notes for 3 months or something, I think. Iran is basically crazy. There's reports that, Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader, went into the bunker. Now, wait a minute. Let me explain to you what really happened, okay? Ayatollah Khomeini went into the bunker in June. Did Ayatollah Khomeini ever really come out of the bunker? No, he's still in the bunker. Maybe they built another bunker for him and he changed bunkers, but he's been bunker dwelling since the 12-Day War. So people are, acting like, all of a sudden he went into a bunker. No, the piece of trash has been bunker dwelling for a long time. All right. Now this is not confirmed, so you got to take this with a grain of salt. Iran has deployed several ships and go-fast boats, speedboats, at a distance of 200 kilometers from the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln. Now, could this be true? Yeah. I mean, you're talking 120 miles away from the aircraft carrier. That is going to be likely picked up by the aircraft carrier, but they're not going to do a lot about it. And do we know if the aircraft carrier is, kind of staying stationary or going in circles or moving around? I don't know. They're really playing their cards close to the chest about the aircraft carriers. Now, we still don't have a clue as to where the Bush went. It didn't just mysteriously leave on the 13th of January to go to Gilligan's Island and have a picnic or something like that. We don't know where it is. If it went to the UK, I'm sure we'd know. If it went by Cyprus, I think we would know, unless it's 100, 150 miles away from Cyprus. And it could be in the Mediterranean someplace, and it's very unusual that we're not knowing where this thing is for a long period of time. So it makes me think that it's either deployed for action in the Middle East or it's parked someplace so it could be deployed for action in a day or a day and a half or something like that, right? 2 days maybe. Why Trump would do that makes no sense. I think Trump would be more prone to display it for the deterrent value. There's rumors saying that the Iranians were given 4 demands by Trump, and I don't know what happened. One of the demands was allegedly, I don't believe this is true. One of the demands was allegedly that Iran has to recognize Israel. Trump wouldn't make a demand like that. He knows it's never going to get fulfilled. And it's the theater of the absurd to ask for something like that. So I doubt he would ever do it. One of the conditions that Trump would go for, and I can tell you this for sure, would be the resignation of Ayatollah Khomeini. What happens to him after he resigns is probably going to have to be leave the country. Otherwise, he'll resign and say, "Oh, I changed my mind. I'm going to go back into office." So he's got to leave the country in shame, and then they got to hold free elections. And it doesn't look like the Muslims are going to be able to get another mullah into office there. Now, the Iranians are not going to agree to this. When they get an election and they get a secular guy, he's going to retire and fire the generals and the admirals and whoever else runs their military, probably reduce the numbers of their military down by about a half or 2/3. And not immediately, but rather, I think he'll cut it down by a fourth real quick, like in a month or two. Get rid of the Muslims, And then shift the military away from a Muslim operation to a secular operation. And then over time, reduce it more after he's got stability. But if he keeps it as a Muslim-oriented military, there's a tremendous risk of an overthrow by the military. So he has to reduce it by getting rid of certain units, like banning the militia, the Bajis that were persecuting him with rifles and killing him. He's got to get rid of the IRGC. So if he bans those two and just dissolves them, then they're okay. And, are they going to do a witch hunt for, people that killed the protesters? Most likely. Trump will tell them to minimize it, just keep it to tokenism, get the big top dogs, get 25 or so, hang them or kill them or whatever, and then just let it lay. You made your point. That's what Trump will probably tell them, because they might decide they want to kill 3,000 or 4,000. Trump's going to put an end to that. All kinds of figures are coming out about the number of dead now. We're getting figures in the 20,000s, the 30s, the 40,000s, and the opposition themselves is saying it's over 80,000. And it's pretty much taken that about 350,000 are wounded. Now, what the Iranian forces are doing as of yesterday, they're going to the houses of people that got wounded in these protests, and they're taking them into custody, and they'll never come home again. They won't come home again. No. They'll execute them. If the person is wounded, then they would have to tell the police when they're in their house how they got wounded, and it wasn't in a protest. So it would really involve, bullet wounds. If they happen to have a police report that they were walking down the street and somebody shot them, and the police found them laying there and they got robbed or something, then nothing would happen to them. The currency was reduced to $1 buys 1.43 million Iranian rial. It's a joke. It's literally a joke. So the Iranian regime is suffering from a horrific economy right now. And if Trump gets a new guy in, like the son of the Shah, they'll have to change the economy somehow. The best way, I think, would be to create a new Iranian rial and say the old rial is worth, you need, 25,000 to buy a new rial or something like that. I don't know exactly what the numbers are going to be. And then when the sanctions lift on the oil and natural gas, the currency will rise rapidly. But we're very far away from that, and prophecy does not indicate that to happen. It could happen in an interim move, but I don't see it. Do I see Iran spreading this into an international war? Yeah, easily. China's already shoveling military equipment at them like there's no tomorrow. Okay. Russia's helped them in a lesser level, but they still help them with equipment. Nobody knows what this equipment is. Now, maybe Trump and Netanyahu do, I don't know, and maybe they don't. Maybe they think they know what this equipment is and they got it wrong. Iran will keep it very quiet, hoping for a fear factor that the Americans think, the Americans and the Israelis think that what happened is China gave long-range missiles to Iran. There is no long-range missile that can go from Iran to America. Forget that. Could China have given them missiles that will allow them to reach the UK, Germany, and France? Maybe. It's not likely that they would give it to them, and it's not highly likely they have it, but they might have it. Maybe. Is it highly likely that they gave Iran anti-missile systems to take down aircraft, drones, and missiles? Yeah. And the multiple cargo ships, like 16 coming in 56 hours the other days, that a lot of that can be extra missiles for their anti-missile systems. So let me explain. Your missile defense and offensive systems in any country is relatively based on your missiles and your missile launchers. So one of the mistakes Hezbollah made, they had 100,000 missiles and they had maybe 1,200 launchers. So it's the launchers that count, not the missiles. You can't do anything with the missiles. We're going to throw them. You need the launchers. And the launchers in prophecy scriptures are referred to as the bow. And in Jeremiah 49, God says he's going to break the bow of Elam, and that means that they can't launch missiles. The bow is not the missile. And an arrow can correctly be called a missile. Okay? It's the It's the launcher, the bow, that really counts. You could have a container of arrows. You could have 45 arrows in your pouch that you keep them in. You pull them out. But if your bow breaks, what are you going to do with your arrows? They're not real useful, are they? Is a bow and arrow a good weapon? Well, for what? In Vietnam, they were using them to take out Vietnamese army and Viet Cong, like a sentry, or let's say they were going to attack a base at night, and they had a bunch of people that would be on watch around the base at night. So there'd be a bunch of Green Berets or SEALs or whatever that would have bows and arrows, and they would shoot the people doing patrol and watching the perimeter for an attack. Now, the arrow, they were probably using a 60, 70 pound, foot-pound. The strength of the arrow, the bow was probably about 60 or 70 pounds. So they probably used a broadhead with a very sharp tip. Did they put poison on the tip? I have no idea. Could be, but I don't think so. It's very dangerous to handle a sharp arrow with poison on it, so I doubt they did that. And they probably got a good penetration, and the guy that they were targeting probably fell down or collapsed or sagged or something like that, and would have been in shock, disoriented, and probably not screaming for help. Probably. Now, they might have shot him with more than one arrow. You shoot, they could have got him twice or something. The other ways they do that is they would take a pistol or a rifle with a big silencer on it. They call it a can. On a rifle, it could be 18 inches, and they could go back a distance of 200 yards, and from a fixed rest, like laying down, and a good scope with night optics, kill somebody with it. And there wouldn't have been a lot of noise that would travel 200 yards at night that people would hear. When you have a good can or sound suppressor, what it sounds like mostly is the metal of the pieces in the gun move. You hear the clanging of the metal, which could be enough to cause a problem, but that's why you'd have to stay 1 or 2 or 300 yards away, because that would muffle that sound, and they'd probably think it was just their own soldiers or something. The other way they could do it is they had silenced pistols. They would take a 45 caliber Heckler and Koch pistol, and they put a large silencer on it, and they put an extra notch, and they gunsmithed the gun, so when the gun fired, the slide wouldn't go back. It was good for one shot. Then you had to manually manipulate the slide and everything, and then you could shoot it again. So it had a notch in the slide, and then it had a piece of metal probably to contain it. So the parts wouldn't make the metallic clanging of the sliding back and all of that. It would stay where it is. It would ruin the gun, because after a number of shots, it would wreck the metal. But they weren't worried about that. If they, shot it 3 or 4 times on a mission, it would be a lot. And they didn't care if they had to throw the gun away and get a new one. But they would probably take the gun back and just change the parts that got damaged. and keep using it. I got some weird message. What the heck is this? Probably an ad. I hate the amount of ads you get in Israel. The SMS spam is so bad and loaded with it. Loan shark company. They won't loan you money unless you give them fixed collateral assets like your car or your house, and then the Satan bots do this. And they just get the greatest pleasure in life is taking it away from people and leaving them busted up. They're that sick. They take pleasure in it. Now what? Yeah, what's up? Yeah. Hi. Good. Right. So bring it tomorrow. Okay. Bye. That's my dog food delivery. All right. So anyway, I got a little bit off on that. So they made these pistols, and they would shoot the sentries with that, But anyway, back to the Iranians. So there's a lot of special forces hanging around now by Iran, 5,600. So Trump's up to something. He could be using them to help manage the protesters. They're still arresting people. They haven't stopped. All they did was make it quiet. I told you they would do that. They've taken the people, putting them in warehouses, and then taking them out in groups and killing them. That's what they're doing. Okay. They're like the Gestapo. When they pick you up, you're not coming home. And you know what I'll tell you right now? Every country in the world wants to have a Gestapo. Every single one. Because they're all run by Satan bots. And Satan likes ruling with a reign of terror. And that's what they all want, and they all want to be a royal family. That's their goal, to be royalty. Because if they're royalty, they're immune from any civil or criminal prosecution. So then they have a Gestapo, and they're immune from the Gestapo. I mean, maybe if they tried to kill the world leader or the country leader, or they were selling the country out, then the monarch, the king, or the supreme leader would have to get involved in order and execution. But generally, they're immune from prosecution. So if some regular common person was walking in front of their car and insulted the guy in the car, and he just pulled his pistol out and shot the guy dead in the street, nothing would happen. Nothing. He's immune. If they came to his house and started asking him questions, they wouldn't. All right. So, the way it'll spread is Iran's going to hit other targets. The first targets they're going to hit, aside from American ships and trying to take out American planes, the first target they're going to hit is the American bases in the Middle East, which are in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, not Oman. They're in Syria, they're even in Iraq, they're in Jordan, and they're in Saudi Arabia. And they're going to try to hit those bases. And they probably will hit those bases. Now, it appears rather obvious that the UK And France and Germany have their jets here, and they're going to be attacking Iran also. So Iran will try desperately to hit them. But I don't think they got enough. Let's take a look at distances here so we know what we're talking about. Germany might be the closest, or France. It's either one or the other. Okay. So, say I want distance from Tehran to Berlin by air. Okay, that's 2,175 miles. Do I think that the Chinese would have capability to run missiles this far? I do, especially over land. I do think they could do it. Do I think the Iranians have built this capability? No, but I think China might have it, and Russia too. So that could be a definite problem, because once they attack Germany, they got NATO coming down their throat automatically too. Unless NATO wants to take a position and say, well, you, Germany, picked a fight with Iran, and now you're on your own. But no, they'll say, no, I don't think so. I think that's going to bring NATO in. Now, let's try it with France. Distance from Tehran to Paris, straight line by air. Uh, 2,600 miles. Maybe, but it's getting harder. But it's still possible for China to have that. It's a possibility. I don't think so, but maybe. It really could be. So then Iran, believe me, will fire on France. And that'll also bring NATO in. And France is a tough country. France will start bringing all sorts of junk, aircraft carriers, and all sorts of jets to start blowing up Iran. Now, remember, these three countries, UK, France, and Germany, did the snapback sanctions. So Iran's got it in for them. Now they got it, fighter jets in the Middle East getting ready to attack Iran. All right. They're in Jordan, and they're in Qatar, and they're in Cyprus, which is a safe place in Cyprus. Okay. And they already have been striking ISIS in Syria. So these guys are ready to go. Now let's try London, and I seriously doubt that anything's going to happen. The distance by air straight line from Tehran to London. $2,700 miles. Again, this is a maybe. Let's see if China has. Okay. Does China have any hypersonic ballistic guided missiles that can go 2,500 to 3,000 miles? Now, China will always say they do, but do they really have it? It says yes, but let me see why it says yes. These are called intermediate, like the Russian Orishnik, which we know is real. Um, They even got the name of the missile, the DF-20. What is it? A 26, a DF-26. Does Russia have a medium range hypersonic ballistic missile that will go at least 2,500 miles? The answer on this I'm getting is no. Oh, I worded it wrong. They say Russia does have ICBMs that'll go that far. But I don't put a lot of stock into ICBMs. Let's try the Orishnik. How far will the Russian Orishnik missile go? I gotta spell out Orishnik. Missile go. Let's see. We know the Orishnik is real and it's been used. Yeah, it's saying that the Orishnik goes between 1,900 and 3,000 miles. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't consider the Orishnik a intermediate range missile. I don't know, but Russia may have given some of these missiles to Iran. How many? I don't know. You know, it could have given them two. For deterrent value. It could have given them, 20. I don't know. I don't know. Now, would that be crossing a red line for Russia and China to give these missiles? Well, yeah, but not so much crossing a red line with America as crossing a red line with France, UK, and Germany. And I don't think China's very worried about them. But now comes NATO, but China's not in NATO territory. So can NATO fight effectively, 5,000, 7,000 miles away? Maybe a few people in NATO can, specifically France and the UK, because they have aircraft carriers, and Italy, I believe, has aircraft carriers also. So they could conduct warfare at a great distance like that. But, you go over there, their aircraft carriers aren't as big as America. They go over there, so they got 40 fighter jets on there. China's going to laugh at them. Then they got to evade China submarines, naval mines, ship-to-ship missiles, air-to-ship missiles, bombs, drones. And I got to think what else. And they're far away from home. So that doesn't sound very appealing to them, if the UK and France and Italy went over there and they sent, let's say 3 aircraft carriers together, they'd probably have about 120 planes. Taking on China is insane. If they had 12 aircraft carriers and they brought about 60 or 70 naval warfare ships with them, that would be meaningful. And they're going to do something like that over China giving missiles to Iran? No, I don't think so. They don't have the guts. Will they start a war with China if Iran used Chinese missiles to attack their homeland? No, I don't think so. Would they attack Iran for that? Oh, gosh, yes. They don't have much fear of Iran. Oh, yeah, they would. They would go bombs away, ballistic nuts, crackpot style on Iran. And that would fulfill prophecy. Just bomb the daylights out of it. They could bring aircraft carriers down here. You think Trump's going to stop them? Trump will say, well, Macron, I know you're a jerk, but you let me know what you need. You need food, you need gas, you need repairs. I'll help you. I'll protect your aircraft carrier. You want me to send some destroyers? They're going to get along really well. The UK, oh, no problem. Italy, I don't know if they're going to be in the fight, but if NATO gets in, they'll be in. But just France sending an aircraft carrier and the UK sending an aircraft carrier is going to be 2 more aircraft carriers and close to another 100 fighter jets, which Iran needs like a hole in the head. I don't know how many aircraft carriers France has. Let's get a picture on that. We'll get a figure. How many aircraft carriers does France have, and does the UK have, and does Italy have, and does Germany have any? I'm rather certain Germany has nothing, but I'll check it out just to make sure. France got 1, the Charles de Gaulle. It's a capable, competent nuclear aircraft carrier. The United Kingdom has 2, but I don't think they're nuclear, but that's okay. The Queen Elizabeth sounds like a cruise ship, doesn't it? And the Prince of Wales sounds like a cruise ship, too. I think they used to have a Prince of Wales in World War II that got sank or something. I don't remember. They call these, they don't say USSS, they say HMS, His or Her Majesty's Service, I guess. These aircraft carriers got the jump deck where they have angle up at the end of the runway on the deck so the plane goes up in the air. They don't have the cable with the propulsion system. They don't have that. They do have F-35s on there. Italy has 2 aircraft carriers, non-nuclear. France is the only one with the nuclear one. And Italy does pack F-35s on the aircraft carrier. So that's stealth jets. As I suspected, Germany has no aircraft carrier. Let's try this just to get a better picture here. Give me a list of NATO countries that have any sort of aircraft carrier. So we got France, the UK, we got Italy, we got Spain. Spain's got one. Turkey's got something. I think it's like barely an aircraft carrier. And of course, America's in NATO, so that's another one. Israel does not have an aircraft carrier. Israel doesn't gear itself up to fight wars that far away. Iran's about it. We're not going 7,000 miles away. No. Well, we're not big enough for that. Okay. The only ones that really can gear up for that well is United States, Russia, China, maybe the UK, maybe France, but they don't have enough carriers, That's the problem. Let me check the live stream here. So the situation is Iran attacks the American military bases. Does that drag anybody else into the war other than America? And perhaps France and the UK and Germany are already there, so they'll continue. No, it doesn't introduce new parties into the war. If they attack Israel, what does Iran get out of it? They get only psychological satisfaction and propaganda value, which is too expensive for them to worry about now. And then they get Israel going down their throat. Now, Israel's packing about 350 fighter jets, 50 of which are F-35s, or 48 actually. That's a lot of F-35s, guys, okay? Stealth. Okay, and then we got all kinds of F-15s and F-16s. Partially stealth, all different versions, okay? And we got our own refueling tankers, and Donald Trump is more than happy to let us use his refueling tankers as well. He probably doesn't even charge us for the gas. So Israel would start sending squadrons of 20 jets to drop all sorts of ordnance all over Iran. You see, Netanyahu has to be restrained, according to Trump, or Netanyahu will just go gangbusters and try to annihilate Iran without stopping. Now, that could happen. But here's the point. You got to get this down. Iran only buys itself more trouble if it attacks Israel. It also gives it more targets it has to attack while it's being attacked. So what is the game? Okay, look, sane people would probably try to make a deal with Trump. Okay? Insane people like the ones running Iran won't make a deal with Trump. They'll try to scare him by showing Trump how ferocious and insane they are, as evidenced by 43,000 of the Iranian protesters killed already, and 350,000 wounded, and about 10,000 blinded from chemical agents. So, you got the idea yet? They don't want Israel dropping bombs on their head day and night, which would be the case. Israel would do 2 to 3 runs a day at Iran, between 12 and 20 jets at a throw. Stealth jets in the initial phases until so much of their radar is destroyed. Then comes the F-15s and the F-16s with heavy loads, heavy payloads. Bombs away, bomb, 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 Iran. Okay, that's what happens. So Iran may leave Israel out of it. Remember, it's recompenses. It says year of recompenses. It's a bad word for year. We're in the period of recompenses. Okay, have been, that I know of, since August 10, 2023. So that's payback to the nations for the controversy over Zion. Read Isaiah 34:8. I'll read it for you. I'll read it in the King James. The English King James. There's no Hebrew King James. No. It would be good if they had a Hebrew King James, but it doesn't exist. Okay. Give me in the King James Version Give me in King James Version Isaiah 34, verse 8. What? Oh, it did 54. Stupid thing. Sorry, I meant Isaiah 3:4, verse 8. Didn't like my New York accent. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Controversy's word means fighting or disagreeing. The nations don't want Zion or Israel to be the head of the nations. They don't want Jehovah to have Jerusalem again. They don't want that. They're telling Jehovah that, they've all got together and voted, and they created the UN and all that, and they don't want this. This is what they want. As if Jehovah's going to listen to them. All right, so what happens is they get wiped out pretty much, okay? So because we're in this year, it's not just the 2,000 years of punishment found in Hosea 6:1 and 2 when they killed Yeshua, which was 70 AD. And it says, I'm going to have to read you that too, I guess. So we'll do that. Let me get it up. It's easy to just tell AI to get it up. Give me in the King James Hosea chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. It's convenient. I like this. Come and let us return unto the Lord. So that's Israel, not the churches and stuff. For he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, will he revive us. Okay. 2 days. Peter says 1,000 years is like a day unto the Lord. So the 2 days is like the 2,000-year punishment. Okay. But it's not a precise exact figure like 70 years in Babylon. It's kind of an approximation, you might say. So nobody could figure out the day or the hour. Okay. So after 2 days or 2,000 years, not 48 hours, after 2,000 years, he will revive us. That word is kaya, it means to bring to life. So that's the everlasting life. Okay. Now, it goes on. The third day he will raise us up, and we shall be in his sight. That's not us going up to heaven on the clouds. This is Yeshua on earth with New Jerusalem, and we're in New Jerusalem with him. That's what that means. Okay, it's not a rapture scenario. Okay, so that's what this fight is about, and because it's in recompenses, he's paying back the nations. It's very likely that we're not in this fight, because if we get in this fight, we'd start taking missiles. And the last time they got something like 13 or 17% of their missiles through our defenses. So it's not going to be so much fun for us. And I don't believe that Donald Trump, the UK, and France and Germany have any interest in fighting shoulder to shoulder with us. Maybe Germany, but not the others, because the blowback from the Palestinian states around the world would be heavy duty. So Iran may have their hands full and not attack Israel. Now, what can Iran attack and get away with it other than U.S. bases, which it may or may not get away with?
Sorry, I'm going to say something. Beulah's out, Mommy's in.
Who's out? Who?
Beulah's out.
Where? In the front? Okay.
In the front.
And Mommy's in. Okay. So Iran can attack the Friends of America. You see, the bases are in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, not in Oman, and Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Now, all of these countries are run by a monarchy, which is a dictator. A king is another word for a dictator. The Iranians follow the Shiite version of the Quran, stuff like that. I don't pay any attention to any version of it. It's, to me, as silly as the Tibetan Book of the Dead or something. I pay zero attention to it, but they do. So they consider, the way they interpret their Quran is that a king or a monarchy or an emir or a sultan or any of that junk is illegal because he hoards the wealth for himself and his family with palaces and yachts and private planes, So it has to go to the people. Now, are we going to make believe Iran distributes the wealth to the people when that pig Khomeini is worth $250 billion? I mean, this guy can run with the monarchy of the British throne. He's that rich. Because he's selling black gold, Texas tea, oil. So, I stole that from the Beverly Hillbillies. Sorry. Okay. A lot of you don't know what the Beverly Hillbillies is, I was taking a survey on YouTube. It says, if you're old, you can understand these questions. And it was saying things like, what are peepers? Well, peepers are eyes. And it said, what does keep on trucking mean? And keep it up, don't stop. I did a few of these and I got them all right. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to do this. You know, I was coming in batting 100 for real old. All right. So keep on trucking doesn't make any sense, for what? What does it make sense for? Nothing. But they used to have cartoon pictures. You call them a meme now about this. Keep on trucking. Okay. They used to say things like feed your head, which would be take drugs. Great idea, yeah. How about bang your head and take a hammer and, like Saddam Hussein, when they had the judge trying him before they hung him, he told the judge, the judge has that hammer they bang on. They got a wooden plate, you might call it, that has an area and has a wooden hammer in it, and they bang it like that. So so Saddam says, you know what you could do with your hammer? Go bang yourself in the head. They hung him anyway. All right. And that's what they want to do with Khomeini, is hang him. But Khomeini's well aware of that. All right. So if he attacks the military bases, he's already attacking Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. Got it? Okay. So if that doesn't give him the desired effect, which is to get Trump to the bargaining table, and what does he want from Trump? He wants sanction relief. If Trump wasn't messing with him with the nuclear stuff and putting sanctions on Iran, would they be doing warmongering? I doubt it. Why? They would just try to build up an arsenal of a million. They would. Well, they would. They would, if they had all the money coming in. They wouldn't bother with the missiles. They'd be like, China, Russia, and everyone else. They would just start getting advanced airplanes, hundreds and hundreds of them, stealth, and all this kind of stuff. They might make Muslim planes, which is, it's a rather expensive way to go. I don't think they do it. It'd be a kamikaze. I don't think they'll do that. It's too much money. You're not going to make a $50 million plane to turn it into a bomb. It's stupid. Just drop a bomb from a $50 million plane and fly away. F-35s are $100 million. So, what do they do to bring Trump to the bargaining table? They start hitting the oil refineries in these other countries, and they hit the ports and the piers, which are used to ship the oil out, and they hit the oil storage tanks by the ports and the piers, which are huge. And that's the end of the oil for these countries, and that means the remaining oil, which would be Russian oil and Iranian oil, if they're still kicking, would probably be at the new highs, which would be 200-300 a barrel. People tell me it's going to go to 500. I don't know. I was very conservative with silver. I'll check the price. Silver's over $100 now, and gold broke 5,000. Let me take a break and we'll check that. Oh, but we'll stay with Iran, though. We'll finish up with Iran. Khomeini and his regime are going to do anything before they stop the war. Okay? Now, it hit the American bases, and then America just keeps hitting Iran back. Iran doesn't care if America kills the civilians. You know, Mao Zedong was talking to the United States once, I don't know, 60, 70 years ago or something like that. And maybe 50 years ago. I don't know, it was a long time ago. And they were talking about nuking them. And he said to them, I don't care if you kill 100 or 200 million people. It doesn't bother me. And he meant it. He really didn't care. You got to get this down. Do I believe Trump really understands this? Yeah, I think Trump does. So Iran was really angry at Trump. Why? Because this attack that the protesters did in Iran was managed by MI6, Mossad, CIA, and who knows, French intelligence, German intelligence, I don't know. They funded it, they managed it, they gave them weapons, they gave them comms, communication. They gave them all sorts of equipment, probably training. They might have had agents on the ground helping them and everything else, right? And they were going around managing the people with the internet communication. Because the internet has encryption. It's easy to encrypt on the internet. Now they could break the encryption. Sure. But you don't normally break encryption in 4 or 5 minutes or 15 minutes. It takes a little bit of time. So the protester was giving instructions, go here now, go to this bank, go to that bank, rapid fire, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. And they would go to the banks, they'd break the windows, break the doors, break the ATM machines, all this stuff, right? Wreck it. They were also wrecking stores. But it was methodical. It was being controlled. And they were being told, take this route because the police are over here. So they were getting guidance. Okay? Probably from drones, surveillance drones, or any number of ways. And they were devastating the place. So the Iranians had to close the internet. Now, they were prepared for this, so they had Elon Musk, who's obviously a friend of Trump, give them Starlink. Well, not that many had Starlink. You needed extra equipment. And they found a way to track the Starlink users, and they went and rounded them up. They were burning government buildings, burning government cars, shooting soldiers of Iran, killing them, attacking them in the street. I mean, it was serious. So once Iran cut the internet off sufficiently, they thought, then they started a reign of terror on their own people. Because this was an attempt by the United States predominantly to overthrow the government of Iran. That's the reality of this. Okay? I don't think Trump is finished with this idea. Okay? To get this to work, what has to happen? Khomeini got to go. And the landmark buildings that represent the power and the might and stability of the Iranian sicko government need to be burned and destroyed. So there's no longer any evidence of their rule, and their leader is dead. Then you got to insert a new leader. Along comes the Shah's son. The Shah was a dictator, by the way, but he was a better dictator than the other dictators. Still a dictator. So he was not a Muslim or a devout Muslim dictator. He was a Satan bot. He probably said he was a Muslim or some junk like that, you know. He used to leave Jews alone and stuff. He wasn't, you know, he was a dictator, but there's worse. All right. So Trump's going to do this again. This isn't being brought out, but that's what he's going to do. That's his only option. He has no ground forces. Did you ever see in the paper Trump brought 900,000 soldiers? He'd really need probably 2 or 3 million ground forces to do anything, to occupy and control the place. But he has those numbers with the protesters. They could grow to that size. Easy. But, you know, it doesn't have to. They're just going to wreck things. And it'll work. It'll work. It's not that hard to do. If he pulls it off. I don't think he's going to pull it off because of prophecy. If he did, it would be interim. But it could work. It's sound. But it's against prophecy, so I wouldn't go for it. And if it did come to pass, it would be very temporary. So Trump will be bombing all sorts of stuff, trying to keep the Persian Gulf open if he can, because they're going to close it. And hoping he can defend the other oil-producing countries in the Middle East, but I don't believe he can. When you're talking about taking like roughly 1,000-mile missile shot at Israel, that's one thing. When you're talking about taking 120, 140-mile shots at a lot of these oil-producing countries that are on the other side of the Persian Gulf, those kind of missiles are easier and way more abundant for Iran. I mean, Iran's got thousands and thousands of those. They just pelt them out. You know, boom, 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 boom. You know, keep them launching drones, this and that. These countries don't have that kind of a heavy-duty defense mechanism against that. Now, this is what you're not hearing that I believe is true. These oil-producing countries can fall apart easily. Day after day, a missile attack will do it. First of all, they're run by jerks, okay? They really are. These are Satan-bought rich kids that grew up with platinum spoons in their mouth, not gold, platinum, okay? More expensive. Well, gold, I would say now, that's more expensive than platinum. All right. Had a gold spoon in their mouth. and they are idiots, and they run the country. And they have foreigners build their oil refineries, build their oil wells, take care of the whole system. They pay foreigners to do it. They're too dumb to do it. And they buy whatever weapons they have from foreigners, and a lot of them use mercenaries. And, you know, believe me, if you want to be in the Air Force in the UAE, they're not going to put you in the Air Force as a pilot just because you scored well on some tests. No, you'd have to be in a royal family, or they wouldn't put you in. So you got complete morons running all these countries. I'm not kidding you, morons. And if they start taking missiles, they're going to collapse. The country could collapse. They're loaded with foreign workers, loaded with them. Okay. And they're going to want to get out of there. Here's the trouble. These foreign workers are going to have to give their passport to their employer to hold for them so they fulfill their contract. So they're going to go to their employers, the oil refineries and stuff like that, and say, hey, you can't keep us safe. We got to leave, but we'll come back. Don't worry. Give us our passport. We want to get out of here. And what will they say? Gee, if we give them the passport, they're going to stop working and our whole industry will shut down. No, drop dead. You signed the contract. Then they're going to start calling their country's embassies, try to get other passports or travel documents on an emergency basis and get out of the country. That's what they're going to try to do. And there's going to be a lot of people screaming and yelling at Iran, and Iran's not going to back off, and they don't care who they kill, and it's going to cause probably more countries to want to attack Iran, some of which may attack it. So the countries could go into chaos, okay? See, that's a form of slavery when they hold your passport. That's what that is. And they do it to their domestic servants in their houses. And I understand a lot of them, they never get their passports back. They got to stay there forever. And they don't pay them. And, you know, I think it was Saudi Arabia had legal slavery in 1988. And America was an ally and a friend of theirs to 1988, starting in the 50s or the 40s or whatever. And they were having slaves. And America, no problem. The home of the free and the brave. Yeah, but they sure encourage other people to not be free. So you got the idea is disable the security forces that will go after the protesters. And then as they deploy police and military and whoever else they got to go after the protesters, drones, whatever, America will try to take down any of these weapons and military groups. Okay? That's what I think is going to go on. That's the only thing that makes sense. Just bombing Iran for the sake of bombing them. Where's your end game? The end game is Trump needs the oil. Okay? He doesn't need it. He wants it. He wants it out of the hands of BRIC. He's using Ukraine to destroy the Russian oil, thus out of the hands of BRIC. The UAE is a weak punk country. Trump could persuade them to fall back in line and leave BRICS. And Saudi never really, no, Saudi did join BRICS. So Saudi and the UAE, the wind blows this way, they go this way. It blows that way, they go that way. They don't know what to do. Trump will lead them. But they're not committed to Iran, so Trump can manipulate them. I think he can. And that's what you're going to see. And then it could spread how? These other countries are lunatics. They're not going to say, oh, gee, we're getting bombed. Oh, this is horrible. Oh. No. They're going to come back at Iran. How are they going to come back at Iran? Any way they can. They'll bomb them. They'll shoot missiles at them, whatever they can do. They're vindictive. They'll fight back, and they'll keep encouraging Trump to fight back. And if the Iranians decide to hit Germany, France, or the UK in return for them getting hit, I think you'll see NATO get into it. And what happens if NATO gets into it? Well, that'll be the end. All the NATO countries, everybody will kick up 10 or 12 aircraft. And, you add in another 300 aircraft bombing Iran. I mean, the skies in Iran are going to be so overcrowded, the fighter jets bombing Iran are going to probably bang into each other. You got to be careful they don't have collisions. They'll be bombing everything. So that'll be initially a target-rich environment, Iran, and then it's going to be, not that rich of a target. And, they're going to be digging different targets. Different countries are going to have their own ideas what they want to destroy. And eventually you'll get to the point where Iran is so busted up that the people leave and their lives are spared. They go out and, they just run away. They go to other countries and the sword follows them and they get killed. So this is what we're going to see. Will it lead to a ground invasion of Iran? Yes, if you get NATO involved, NATO and America, they could, now the European Union might kick in too. So that's the countries that are in Europe and not in NATO. And they might put together a big enough force of soldiers to go in on the ground. But I'm telling you, if you were bombing them for a month, you might only need 1 million. But you're always going to need 1 million soldiers to go in. If Trump had a lot of countries helping him and he could take control, he wouldn't be opposed to it. He'd do it. He would probably have to come up with 200, 250,000, and the others would raise the rest. Yeah. So that's what Trump's going to do. And it's so easy to get out of hand. Now, when it starts getting out of hand, do you know what China, Russia, and North Korea and Belarus are going to do? Because I sure as heck don't know. Do you? I don't think you know. They may get into the fight somehow. How? They might say, to heck with Iran. China might say, heck with Iran. I'm not sticking my neck out for Iran. But let's see if we can draw Trump out to get him to bring more and more soldiers out of the United States, and then I'll attack him. So that's what's cooking. We're being told here in Israel the weekend. That's what our government officials are talking like. So today's Monday. They're still airlifting. I don't know what they're looking to do, but people are getting killed in Iran daily, and Trump doesn't want to talk about it because then people are going to say, "What are you waiting for? Go in now." And he doesn't want to go in now, and you got to leave yourself about a 20% window that Trump just punks out and like a baby and just runs away, because he does that. And he definitely could do that. Okay. Trump could definitely punk out and run away. What is this here? Wait a second. I just said something. What the heck? I think this might be something about the war. Hold on. It's from the government. They're telling me I got to get a text, an SMS. I don't think it went through. I don't know what it is. Let me see. I'm going to ignore it after that. I'm not that worried about it. No, they never sent it. So it doesn't, it could be bogus. The Iranians could send stuff like this out. I don't know what they're talking about here. Um, it says, send me a code. No, they had my phone number. But I click on it to send the code and I get nothing. So I don't know what it is. I don't care. Okay. I doubt it's important. I'll just ignore it. It's from the health insurance in Israel. It might be something about explaining what they're going to do because of the war with Iran or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. Okay. So let me get back in the news. Families of the deceased in Iran that were shot were forced to pay exorbitant prices for each bullet in the bodies of the victims in the family as a condition for releasing the body from the identification centers. So if you wanted to get your brother or your mother's body out to bury her, you were charged for each bullet a huge amount of money. Now that's Hitler. You know, probably this wasn't done by the government officially. It's probably the idiots working in the place where the bodies were shaking the people down. Maybe it was the government. I don't know. It was further reported that the family members of the deceased were lured out of their homes by various messages, and then some were arrested and shot at the entrance to their homes. So they were they felt they were also involved in the protests, and then they shot them. So there's still a reign of terror going on in Iran. It hasn't stopped. Because the Iranians are probably rather cognizant of the fact that Trump is likely going to light the protesters up again and support them with aircraft. And the problem is the protesters are going to take Khomeini and hang him off a streetlight, or draw and quarter him, or torture him, or beat him to death, or something. It's not going to be fun for him. So again, the news that Khomeini went to a bunker. He went to a bunker back in June, the 12-Day War, and he never came out. He might have built him a new bunker, but he's been living underground since the 12-Day War back in June. So, Iran instigated a flight ban for private and recreational aircraft and drones across the country of Iran for 3 months. So there is no flying of private planes, recreational planes, or drones for 3 months in Iran. Well, that means they're worried about special forces coming in with light aircraft or something, I think. See, what Iran's best move is to make such a stink and put up such a fight that Trump either gives up and says, oh, these guys are too bloody for me, and forgets about it, or he tries to make a deal with them that is favorable to them. And the thing that they want is they want the sanctions lifted. There's a report that there was a special plane of the U.S. Army Electronic Warfare Command on its way to the Middle East. This is one of their very high-end, sophisticated electronic warfare things. So, Trump is bringing in a lot of not crude muscle, but high-tech weaponry. The United Kingdom, England, evacuated their embassy in Tehran. Did they have it completely evacuated yet? Probably, or very close to it. Um, that is because they don't want their people captured by Iran and held for ransom. Because Iran doesn't care about international law and lies and stuff like that. They don't care. So they don't want that. So that's why they'll take their people out. They'll get all the confidential documents out of there. They'll shred them. Now, when they shred them, they don't just shred them this way, they shred them in a crisscross. So it's very difficult to put that together. Now, let me explain a few things. You have a shredder, usually it sits on an office style garbage pail, and that's okay. And if you just got the shredder that goes down by length, it's good for casual use. If you don't want people reading your bills and stuff, yeah, you just put them in there, and that's probably going to stop it. But when you start having cross cuts, so in other words, you don't have long strips, you got little pieces this big, it makes it like, 30, 40 times harder to read. But let me give you a tip. When you get ready to throw this out, like you put it in a garbage bag and put it in the garbage, that's what people will steal it. You put your hand in the bag of all the shred in there, and you stir it up vigorously, and then shake it, stir it, turn it upside down, and stir it and stir it and stir it. If you got a big bag of shred this big and you stirred it up with your hand, well, now you just made it another 50 times harder to use because it's mixed up with so much other shred. So the way they usually do it is they got to by hand take big tables and lay the pieces of shred out, and then they've got to take pictures of all of the pieces and then have some artificial intelligence program put it together like a jigsaw puzzle, but it has its limits. So that makes it a lot better. The way to really do it, and and I've done this, if you have something you sent and you're really considering it sensitive, like it has passwords for places, on the internet you don't want people to have or anything like that. What you do is you save your shred after you feed it in. And you can take a plate or the sink, you have a stainless steel sink, you got a few pieces, 3 or 4 pieces of documents you want to shred, put it in the sink and just light it one at a time so you don't get your smoke detector going off. And, light them and then burn it. And then wash the ashes down the sink. That's all. Are they going to recover that? I don't think if all the king's horses and all the king's men aren't going to get the ashes washed down the sink. They're not going to get that. No. Um, the Iranians said they have footage of one of their drones flying over the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier group. The Abraham Lincoln itself flying right over it. Is that true? It is not true. What appears to be true is Iran's IRGC has released footage of a U.S. carrier group, specifically the USS Abraham Lincoln, in the Persian Gulf region, along with a warning message about its drone strike capability. This video is meant as a threat, not evidence of drones over U.S. cities. So That's what this thing says. So they didn't, the Iranians would say they did that, but, they didn't get that. Listen to me, the United States Navy is not letting any Iranian drone fly over their ship, okay? That ain't happening, okay? If that happened and the captain didn't shoot the drone down, they'd fly another captain out there immediately and yank him off the boat and have him, folding napkins for the rest of his career or something. So the protesters, when they were protesting, because this was organized by MI6, Mossad, CIA, and others, they were they protested in 400 cities in Iran. This is going to be revived. It came close. America made a mistake, and they started thinking that Iran wouldn't go out and massacre the people. Did Israel make that mistake? Rest assured, no. The Israeli man on the street would tell you they were going to do that. Okay? Um, the wounded that they could take out of the hospitals, the Iranian government took out of the hospitals and put them in their warehouses for execution. The ones that were laying there in the hospital bed with all the tubes and the feeding and unconscious or whatever, they just shot them in the hospital bed. This is supposed to scare people because look how brutal Iran is. It didn't work. Whereas another report that the number of the fatalities has surpassed 36,500. The protesters themselves are saying it's about 80,000. So it's very high. Based on reports from the IRGC, they got 36,500 killed, but I would think they downgraded. Now, this is what scares me about Trump. This is where he could punk out. And if he punks out, what's going to happen is Iran's going to conduct a reign of terror that's going to last 6 months or a year. The people in Iran are going to be under such bondage and control. It's not even funny because these mullahs are scared to death of getting overthrown. So the Air Force is preparing to begin a multi-day readiness exercise across the Middle East to demonstrate its ability to deploy, disperse. So why are they doing a show of force in the region? Is there a chance that it's actually a military exercise that they want to rehearse before they do it? No, because that's tipping their hand. And if it was a true rehearsal, they would be explaining and showing the Iranians how they actually intend to attack so the Iranians could be fully prepared. It's a show of force. And we're bombing the daylights out of Hezbollah while this is going on to make sure Hezbollah doesn't have any weapons to fling at us or shoot missiles at us, I should have said, when the fighting with Iran starts. Now, Hezbollah is saying, nothing really. Iraq intends to be with Iran, and that's a little bit of a problem. And the Houthis definitely are going to be with Iran. And Iraq, too. I'll read you this word that came from an Israeli official. The head of Israel's aviation, that's the airports, Delta, United, okay, told foreign airlines it is estimated that we are entering a sensitive period towards the weekend. So we're getting an estimate that this weekend it's going to start. But when you're dealing with Trump, he's so scared eating so much tossed salad. I don't know if it'll really start. Trump is still dumb as a bag of hammers and wants to see if he's going to get Iran to just back down. See, let me explain what Biden did. Biden had 42 ships here, 3 aircraft carriers, all sorts of aircraft and all kinds of things, right? And Iran didn't back down. They're not impressed by your ability to show force. They don't believe you're going to do it. The only time they're going to believe it is when the bombs are falling on their heads. So Trump's not scaring nobody. He's an idiot. So the Iranian security forces are conducting raids throughout the country looking for protesters, and, they're taking them away, shooting them, whatever, while the citizens are fleeing towards the sea in the south and the mountains in the north, while the Iranians are sending drones to track them so they could go get them. So using the protesters, the Iranian citizens, to overthrow the government is a very, very good idea now. Excellent idea because they're motivated. I'm sure that we really don't know exactly how many people were killed yet, and we may never know, and it may take a long time and so forth. But I would say that you're probably at 40,000 as a minimum, something like that. And that number grows by the day because they're still persecuting these people. Right now, there's a lot of problems with Arab killing Arab inside Israel with guns. Their guns are illegal guns, typically AK-47s. As an Israeli citizen, you cannot go buy an AK-47, okay? If you were a major in the army, you cannot go buy an AK-47. You're not getting any kinds of permit to buy an AK-47, okay? So these people are criminals, and Netanyahu's always let them have hundreds of thousands of weapons, is what I'm told, and never really does anything to take their weapons away. See, he's our enemy. He's like an enemy to us. He's so bad. Doesn't lets them have their weapons, but fights Israelis tooth and nail from getting the legal right to buy a gun. He's such a piece of garbage. People need to know what a sick person he is. And I'm not sure all the Israelis understand it because they've been used to people like this running the country. They don't understand. You know, when George Bush Jr. was running America, the ATF agents were going around to gun stores and being nice to him and saying, you know, we're not out here to put you out of business. You know, there's not enough gun stores in the area. We'll support you. You know, they were actually being nice to the gun stores. Now, if the gun store was committing violations, they weren't nice, but you know. Then the ATF came into an area and they would go to the sheriff and the police. They say, hey, we're new here. We'll work anything you give us. We'll work on any frivolous case. So you see, but they still wouldn't raise a hand unless somebody was breaking the law. So the guns were flourishing. You know, Netanyahu wants nobody to really have guns in Israel. He's that bad. I mean, he's pro-gun control. In Israel, you know what it's like trying to stop people from having guns? It's like going to the Le Mans car race and handing out speeding tickets. It's that stupid. All the Arab countries surrounding us, their populations are loaded with guns, AK-47s in full auto. The Israeli people should be given full auto rifles, full automatic, and they should be able to carry at least 80 rounds with them. If they elect to carry a pistol instead, so be it. But that's what the gun laws should be. And this business, you can only have one gun, that's idiotic. You know, what's wrong with somebody? I mean, if they made it, let's say 6 guns, okay, that's enough. All right. You don't need 82 guns. You know, 6 is plenty. You know, but Netanyahu is such a pig. You know, he doesn't want us to have these. He's life-threatening. He threatens our life, that idiot. You think I feel good Netanyahu's running the country with Iran running around and stuff like this? I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. some Jews in Israel see the violence in the Arab community and issue the police are unable or unwilling to address. Well, probably because Netanyahu doesn't want him to, and there's got too many illegal guns. They're open about it. When they have weddings and celebrations in their villages, they sit there and drop 40-round clips of AK-47s. It's about 3.5 seconds a clip, but they do it in bursts. It's open. It's pretty open, and this piece of garbage Netanyahu lets them do it. Can you justify Netanyahu's policy towards being liberal towards them with guns and being tough on the Jews with guns unless he hates us? I can't come up with any reason why other than that. I can't come up with anything. It could also be Ben Gvir. They're saying Ben Gvir's got some control as security minister over the police, that he doesn't want them investigating the Arabs killing each other. But why doesn't he take the guns away from the Arabs? Good question. Why do they have these guns? To protect themselves from us. What do you think they got them for? Do you think maybe they would join if Hezbollah and Hamas and all the other idiots invaded Israel? They would take their guns out and start killing Jews and stealing their cars and taking their houses and stuff like that. I do. Israel is reportedly backing new militias in Gaza. I guess the old ones didn't work out, that are fighting Hamas. Then we hear from Doctors Without Borders. So Doctors Without Borders go around helping people that love and dedicate their lives to killing Jews. Good move, Doctors Without Borders. Nice people, huh? Said it may have to suspend its operations in the Palestinian territories unless it complies with Israeli demands to hand over its staff's personal information. Netanyahu's chief of staff, suspected of obstructing justice. The Babil leaks case is making it difficult for investigators to access his mobile phone, sources told Haaretz. I don't know what this is all about, but now they're suggesting that Trump may try a blockade on Iran. It's going to be a naval warfare. I don't see it. No. They impose a blockade. It's to cut the money off. They can't sell oil. And then China and India and other countries are going to come over there and they're going to want to fight with America over that. And if anything's going to start a world war, that would do it. I don't think Trump's going to do that. I could always be wrong, But nah, I don't think so. I think Iran will do the blockade, and they'll control who comes and goes. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, I don't want to forget, there's a few prayer requests we got. Let's go through those, and then I'm going to deal with Superman for you. I'm actually going to do a little, almost a Bible study on Superman comics, which were written by two Jewish guys in 1939, and Hitler did not like them. Okay, first prayer request for A.H. All right, I'll give you the prayer request and you guys can pray for this, okay? A.H. Alpha Hotel. I'll pray and you can agree. Okay. My Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for A.H. Alpha Hotel for healing after surgery. I pray you heal this person and they have a good, quick recovery with minimal or no pain. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. If you're a believer, thank you, even if it's a video. Next, for RS, Romeo Sierra, RS. Okay, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for RS, Romeo Sierra. I pray for healing for this person in the hospital with kidney problems and dementia. I pray for a general good healing for this person and return to this person's away from the dementia. And I ask this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with this if you're a believer, even though it's a video. Next, IF, Idaho Foxtrot, IF, Idaho Foxtrot. My Heavenly Father, I already prayed, so I'll give it to you to pray for. IF, pray for, okay, here's what happened. IF was carrying a load of something pretty heavy, I think laundry maybe, and fell down a full flight of steps. A lot of people fall down a full flight of steps and they're dead. I mean, or they wind up in an ambulance and in the hospital for a month or two. It's really bad going down a full flight of steps. He did. And just a couple of lumps and bumps and bruises. That's it. So that's probably the Lord taking care of IF, believe me. All right, and let's pray. I already prayed, so I don't want to pray again. So pray for IF, Idaho Foxtrot, for healing from the bruises from falling down this step. Okay, full healing. Okay, and you can do that, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, of course, now or even if it's a video. And we have another prayer request. And this is a very important thing we do. And if you ever need such a prayer request, you'll really realize how important it was when you get healed or something, right? Okay. We have a prayer request for AC, Alpha Charlie. I'll pray it and you can agree. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, I pray for AC, Alpha Charlie. I pray for healing from a wound that's not healing, not responding to treatment. So I pray for the healing of this wound for AC rapidly and quickly without any pain or suffering. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that if you're a believer, even if it's a video. Okay, let me delete these prayer requests so I don't forget and do them again tomorrow or something. I got a section I put them in. All right, so we're going to talk now. This is really to get more enjoyable than just talking about the war all the time. We're going to actually do a little Bible study out of Superman comics, and it's more tongue-in-cheek and fun than it is a real Bible study, but you'll see how they put Bible stuff and Hebrew into, even the names of God, into the Superman comics. I'll be right back. All right. So let me give you some background on Superman. When I was a kid, I had a friend that I was pretty close with, even as a teenager, and his father actually made comic books, but I don't think he made any real famous ones. But the big comic books when I was a kid were Superman was numero uno. Then you had Batman. Archie was a real big one. That was about kids in a high school growing up somewhere in a suburb. And it had interesting characters like Archie and Veronica and Jughead. Okay. Superman was a fictitious figure created in 1939 by two Jewish guys. Comic books were around, and they appeared in the newspapers. When you read the Sunday newspapers, which were thick, some of them like the Times, New York Times, were that thick, and cost a lot of money. They were 25 cents, where the paper was usually a nickel or something, And a lot of people, like my parents, and many people, Sunday morning would read it. My parents would send me out in the winter usually, but sometimes in the summer, usually the winter, to go to the store. They'd have me go to the bakery and I'd buy what's called the onion board. Onion board is great. It's a Jewish dish. It comes in a square or rectangular piece. On the edges, it's puffed up hollow. The center, it's thin. It has pieces of onions and poppy seeds, and depending on where you're getting it, from where other things in there. And it's baked, and it's delicious. And it's not in Israel, but it will be when the Ashkenazis come here on the next exodus from Europe and America. When more of them come here, we'll get it. Right now, the predominant foods in Israel are Arab foods, I would say. Exceptions being in the big cities, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and other big cities like Haifa. And the ultra-Orthodox Jews eat a lot of really good food that's ultra-Orthodox. That's Ashkenazi. They eat the potato kugel, potato pierogan, the cannonballs and the soup, blintzes, knedlock, all the stuff. They have everything. Most of the Jews in Israel don't know anything. They don't know about this stuff at all. They don't know anything about it. Okay, so a lot of Jews here in Israel came from Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Morocco, Algiers, Tunisia. The ones that came from Russia and Poland are the ones that mostly are going to know the good Ashkenazi food. So anyway, these guys wrote a story about another planet somewhere that was being destroyed by itself. The planet was breaking up. And there was a scientist that was trying to warn them that it was breaking up. And they didn't believe him. and they didn't build ships to escape to another planet. So he built a small rocket ship for his son. He looked around to find a planet that was worthy of his son, and he sent this planet his son as a gift. You getting it yet? Okay. So his son was Superman. Okay. But what was Superman's name on Krypton? Kal. What does El mean? God. They were working Hebrew here. They're doing Hebrew, but putting it in English. They're doing Hebrew. Now, Hitler knew this. Hitler hated these guys. And during World War II, they had Superman killing the Nazis. And the Japanese and the Italians were against us with Mussolini. They hated he hated these Jewish kids that created Superman. So anyway, they called Superman Kal, which means something like God. Because when Superman came to Earth, he had superpowers. He could fly, had X-ray vision. He could burn you up with his eyesight. You could shoot him, and bullets bounced off him and stuff like that. So they named him Kal, like God. Now, millions and millions of people back then and even today had no idea what these guys were doing. They were, they were plugging the whole Jewish faith in here. All right, it gets better. Oh, it gets better. The father of Kal was named Jor-El, and that doesn't really go anywhere. It might, because there's no J in the Hebrew alphabet. So why would they say J? Because we know that J becomes like a Y. So I'm not entirely certain why they called the father of Superman Jor-El. Jorel. El is God. So that one I can't. Well, I could dig it. I dug into it a little bit, but it's all right. Well, yeah, let's just keep going. I made a lot of notes on this, so I think you'll enjoy this. The name of the planet is Krypton, which is written exactly as what we call a loan or a borrowed word from the Greek modern science that Hebrew would use. And it's pronounced Krypton. Or well, we don't know how you pronounce Krypton. We say Krypton. It may be Krypton. I don't know. Because they never spoke. They just wrote the words, Its meaning is sort of unusual. It's the chemical element gas atomic number 36. It's a technical scientific term, but it comes in the Hebrew. The Hebrew people speak it. It's not a Hebrew biblical word, but it's been borrowed from the Greek. All right, so now we need to get into Yael. That's another character in Superman's comics by DC Comics. Yael. The word Yah is short for Yehovah. Yehovah. It means that's the name of God. El is God. So when you say Yael, what you're saying is Yah is God. Okay. Now there's a character in Superman named Yael. It's no coincidence. These guys were having a lot of fun. Yael is portrayed as an ancient Kryptonian warrior explorer way, way back before Superman and his father were alive. So they're making a play on Jehovah. So he's part of Superman's deep lineage on Krypton. So Superman is descended from Yael. Yeshua, Jehovah, his son. You getting it? Yael is the ancient one in Krypton. So that's the play there. So he sent his son to save the people on Earth, Yeshua, right? So Jor-El sends his son to Earth as a gift to, help the people on Earth. You getting it? But he wasn't necessarily making a play on Yeshua here. We're going to bring Moses into this in a minute. So this Yael guy lived thousands of years before Jor-El, who was Superman's father. So Kal-El is the like God, or something like voice of God, maybe it's a Jor-El. Could be Yar-El, but I don't know. There was another one in there called Lara Law Van. It's not Hebrew, but it's the Hebrew cadence, Lara Law Van. But anyway, then we have Zor-El, like Zorro, but Zor-El, and that's Supergirl's father, and that's his cousin. They had, I don't know if they still do it, but they had Supergirl comics too. And my favorite was Crypto. That was Superman's dog. But, they just added this stuff on. When Superman came to Earth, his father didn't stuff a puppy dog in the rocket with him. So, and then you come up with another one from the line of El, which is God from God's lineage. They're saying here, Val-El, another ancestor figure from the tribe of El, or the family of El. So let's do this with Moses, okay? So, because they probably weren't promoting Yeshua. they were Old Testament, Jews not believing the New Testament, I would assume. So when you get into Moses, what was happening? Pharaoh was killing the male children like Herod did many years forward. So the mother didn't want to see her son die. She didn't want to kill him. She didn't want to. I imagine if you didn't want to kill him, you could bring him and they'd kill him for you or something like that. So she put Moses in a little basket and sailed him in the water to go where the Pharaoh's family was, thinking they'd find him and maybe they'd save him. And then, of course, if he was in Pharaoh's house, how could you kill him? You can't kill him. So that worked out. So then he grew up in Pharaoh's house and he was spared. So Superman was put in a rocket and sent to Earth. And right after the rocket took off, the planet Krypton blew up, right, into little pieces. So he escaped. Moses escaped death. Superman escaped death. Superman came to Earth to be a hero for the people. Moses was a hero for the people of Israel. You see the thematic. This was on purpose. This wasn't, and they weren't ever openly talking about this, but it was like their little joke on the world, because all the goyim were reading Superman comics, and if they knew it was all based on Hebrew words and names and stuff, they they never would have done it. Okay. So Moses had superpowers, right? In a way, opening the Red Sea and stuff like that, calling the plagues down, and Moses and Superman had it. Okay. Now there's another thing that Superman was resembling, that many of you probably don't know about, but it's about time you would know about it. This is not real, this is fiction, but it's fiction that a lot of the Jews are taught and they believe. And the term here is a golem, Golem. What is a golem? A golem is a creature that the Orthodox Jews build out of clay or mud or something, right? A human-looking thing. And they activate this with a secret word that I guess Jehovah would activate it for them. This is not real. This is fiction. Doesn't exist, but they teach it and believe it to them. So this is perhaps taken from that woman named Shelley who wrote the Frankenstein. They put together a creature from body parts of different people and sewed them together. And then when there was an electrical storm, he collected lightning, and he had two metal pieces coming out of the monster's head, and he put the electrical things on there, and it brought the lightning in, and then it brought Frankenstein to life. But Frankenstein wasn't a real human. He was a part human. It was something different, right? Okay, so the golem is something different than a full human. It's not a real human. It's made out of clay, and they portray him sometimes being 9, 10, 12 feet tall or whatever. They can make them as big as they want them. It's just fiction. It doesn't exist. What the golem's purpose was, according to them, to protect the Jews from the goyim persecuting them. So if you were in a village in Russia and they were persecuting you, you'd build a golem and you'd send the golem out to go kill your enemies. And you couldn't hurt the golem. You could shoot him, but he was made out of clay. What are you going to do? He'd kill him, So they have comic books in for the Jews. They title the comic book Golem. The kids read comic book stories about the golem that goes around and protects them from the heathen. And they think if you go to enough, you go to the yeshivas long enough, that they'll teach you how to build a golem and you can go out and build a golem. Nobody ever built a golem. Okay, there ain't no golem. There are no secret golems that they don't see. It's nonsense. Nonsense. So the golem was not a real human. Superman was not a real human because he came from Krypton and he defended the people like the Jews got defended by a golem, but Superman wasn't specializing in defending Jews because if they wrote the comic book that way, nobody but the Jews would buy it. Now, the Golem comic books are only bought by Jews, and you probably never heard of Golem comic books. If I didn't tell you about it, you wouldn't know about it because they're sold in the stores where the Orthodox Jewish kids and the ultra-Orthodox Jewish kids are. They are the ones that read about Golem. There ain't no Golem, but Superman is also themed a little bit on the Golem. So he's brought to life by the divine name of the sacred word, whatever that means. I guess it means God's name, but I don't know anything about that. It's a fiction. It's created to defend the Jewish community. It lacks full human judgment like Frankenstein. It's probably more like a Frankenstein. It doesn't have full human judgment like Frankenstein's like an idiot in a way. And it has to be controlled. And if you can't control it, you got to deactivate it if it becomes dangerous. The golem is not really evil. It's a raw power tool for the Jews to get rid of their enemies. So this is a lot of what they did. Was like this. Superman is there to defend the weak. Okay. That's what the golem does, and that's what Moses did in a way, right? Unlike the golem, he is like the golem. He's not self-created. He's created. And his function is directed. He doesn't do things on his own. Well, Superman is a little different, but that's where these guys apparently got all these ideas from. And they did this in 1939 when the persecution of the Jews in Europe by Hitler was really heated up at a very high level. 1939 was a very seriously bad time for Jews in Europe. And that's when they came out with this. And probably a lot of Jews back then knew about it. Nobody ever told me about it. My parents never told me about it. They probably didn't know about it. I grew up in a neighborhood in the Bronx that was 99.9% Jewish, literally that much. But the only people that weren't Jewish were the janitors of the apartment buildings. They were the only ones that really weren't. They called them the super. as superintendent, but they but we were predominantly what I would call pretty secular, you know. But how do I define that to you? Well, the kids that I knew, probably 75, 80% of them would eat non-kosher food, but probably 90% or 95% of them were not allowed to bring non-kosher food in the house, and there was no non-kosher food in the house. So their houses were kosher, you would say, I guess, but they were, they go out and eat Chinese food that wasn't kosher or something like that, right? Or if we went down to Greenwich Village when we were teenagers, we'd get a sausage sandwich. Or if we went to eat in the Italian restaurant, we'd have, sausages, or we'd have a pizza with pepperoni and stuff. Okay, we did that. So, they weren't, really kosher, but a lot of them got bar mitzvah. How many of my friends never got bar mitzvah? There were some kids that never got bar mitzvah. The parents were just full boat secular, and they just didn't observe anything. And there were kids in the neighborhood that were Jewish, and they were that way. I could think of I could think of maybe 3, 4. Yeah, there was a lot of them that never got bar mitzvah, but that doesn't mean a lot. The parents just didn't affiliate. I don't know. It's hard to say. One of the guys in my building, he would get dressed up for Sabbath. Did he go to the synagogue? Not that I know of. Maybe he did, but he would get dressed up and hang around outside. Getting dressed up for Sabbath is absolutely nothing in the Bible to lead one to want to put the good clothes on for Sabbath, and that's not there. So, there was a lot of that, but the kids would eat non-kosher mostly. And a lot of us knew Yiddish, but we weren't, there were varying degrees of Yiddish. I had no fluency in Yiddish. I knew a bunch of Yiddish, but a friend of mine he didn't speak Yiddish, but he would understand Yiddish. Even if it was going fast, he would be able to understand it, but he didn't speak it. Most of in my generation, the parents didn't teach the kids Yiddish. They just ignored it. My grandparents' generation, my parents, they were taught Yiddish. They all knew Yiddish, and Yiddish was what was spoken in the house. But the only time they really used Yiddish was when they were speaking to their parents, whose mother tongue was Yiddish. They didn't use Yiddish. Yiddish is a conglomeration of Russian, Polish, German, and Hebrew. The Hebrew's in there. And they write with characters like Hebrew characters, but the meaning of the words is different than Hebrew. It's not the same thing. So the newspapers in the neighborhood, they had 2 for the Yiddish. They were selling, the newsstands would sell the Herald Tribune, the Times, Wall Street Journal, stuff like that, and they would sell the Post and the Daily News, and they sold the Forward, which was one Yiddish paper, and then that was the big one, then there was a secondary one. Now, there used to be Yiddish theater in New York, but that was really in the teens, like 1915, 1920s, and maybe it was around in the 30s, and then it went away. I think the Depression knocked it out in New York. It was around in 1900, 1890, and stuff like that. Then it went away. There was like vaudeville and Yiddish they had. And then what it was left from our generation was the Borscht Belt, the Catskill Mountains in New York, where all the Jews from New York City, which has the largest concentration of Jews in America. But when you add in the Jews that were in New Jersey and Connecticut and Philadelphia, they would also go to the Catskill Mountains for summer vacation. These were Jewish, basically hotels, and they had kosher food, and they were pretty much dumpy hotels, to be honest with you. I worked in them in the summers, a little bit, not much, a little bit, and they were dumpy, to be honest with you. They weren't good. They had rooms were not so great. They had a shared bathroom. That's what my parents used to get, where you had another room. You had a room here and a room here, and you had a bathroom in between the two of them. And I think it had shower was separate than from the toilet, and you shared the shower and you shared the toilet. And you had maid service daily. The rooms were not carpeted. They had a little throw rug, maybe off the bed, a little thin one. They were wood. They would, it was warm in the summer, so it wasn't that cold. I think some of them had a ceiling fan. They had no air conditioning that I remember. And what else? What else? What else? They had. That was what they had, and you had a dresser or two dressers, and you had a sink in the room with a mirror, so you could drink water off the sink, and you could, see your face, and you wanted to put makeup on it, or whatever. And it had a closet, maybe. Yeah, I think it had a closet, and that had a window or two. It was a dumpy room. You walked up steps to get to the thing. It was, my parents were born in America, but their parents were born overseas in Poland and Russia. So when they lived in Russia and Poland, they were in the shuttle. They didn't go on vacations. They were living in the old country. They never went on a vacation. They didn't have vacations. So for the kids, which were my parents, this was a good vacation. They didn't, they didn't go to a luxury hotel in Disney World, and take the monorail into the park and eat in a nice Italian restaurant. They never knew from stuff like that. So the Catskills were, a lot of it was going on in Yiddish with these people in my parents' generation. So they had shows like cruise ships have shows, except they had very unelaborate shows. They would have, now, if you went to the luxury hotels in the Catskills, which were the Concord and Grossinger's, those were the two luxury hotels. Grossinger's was in the Catskills, but a lot of wealthy non-Jewish people went there. So it was really not a very heavy Jewish restaurant, but I believe it was kosher. But I think it was. I knew a guy that was a baker there once. Johnny Weissmuller, in his latter days, when the poor guy became an alcoholic, he had this Tarzan run. He was really hot shot in Hollywood. And then after that, he had Jungle Jim in the 50s, which was a TV show that lasted a few seasons. And then after that, he burned out. and he couldn't take it, and he became an alcoholic. So Grossingers hired him to be like a swimming coach, lifeguard. Basically, they hired him as a pathetic celebrity who was an alcoholic to hang around the pool and talk to the people and sign autographs and give them tips on swimming, and then at night he probably had an open bar tab and he'd hang around. So people could talk to him, and he got drunk, and then he probably would go home and fall asleep, and that was a pathetic thing, I understand, but a lot of these Hollywood people end up that way. So Grossinger's was a very, very posh hotel. They had an 18-hole golf course. I think they had their own private plane landing strip. I think they had that. And, senators and movie stars would go there. Now, I got to stay in a hotel across the street from Grossinger's once that was far away from them, but across the road. And it was a pretty dumpy hotel. But I could look out and see Grossinger's, And we did that, and it was, you know, that was what we did. And so the comedians in the show would talk Yiddish. So they would make jokes in Yiddish and stuff like that. That's where it went. It reduced itself down to that. And then by the 80s, the Catskills were pretty much finished. And they're just wrecks now, shells of what they were. But I experienced them in the 50s, I think in the 40s, when also as an infant, and the 50s and 60s, and they were an icon. I mean, it was what all the Jews in New York did. Then went to the icon, to the Catskills. They had so many different kinds of hotels. They had what was it, Kutch's Country Club, which was sports oriented, and Lou Alcindor, I think was the guy's name, was working there as a guy putting luggage away for people, like a bellhop. They had all sorts of, any kind of hotel you wanted. They had one called the Raleigh, which was an upper level one, and they had real, bands would come. They had better entertainment, and better food, and they had all different levels, whatever you wanted. My parents took pretty low level hotels where you had a shared bathroom and you had a swimming pool, which was the big attraction, and usually it had a lake, and you could take rowboats out and go on the lake and fish. Once I actually caught a fish, and we put it back in the water. Then I asked my father if I could catch it again, and he said, no, it won't come back. It was a little golden colored fish, nice little fish. We just put them back. We weren't going to eat them. And they had turtles hanging around the place, and the camp. They had a camp. They used to take us on walks to hikes through the woods there, if you want to call them woods, and we used to sneak across the land. Or they showed us how to go through the barbed wire fences, and there'd be cows and bulls around there. You had to be careful with bulls, and you had to watch out for quicksand, or quick mud. But I don't know if that was a rumor, and that kind of thing. And then you'd play ball and you'd swim, and then after dinner they would take you out and they'd build a campfire and you'd roast marshmallows or hot dogs and sit outside. And when you grow up in the city and you're out in the country, most people would go up there for 2 weeks, and this was an icon. All the Jews were doing this. I mean, this was the biggest thing, going on. This was big time. And all the Jews were doing it back, but it went back. It was way before World War II. They were doing it. They would all go up there and do it. They didn't have many camps up there. They did exist, but there weren't many. And they had another way to do it was called the bungalow colony. Now, my mother wanted to go up there for 2 weeks in a hotel where she didn't have to cook and clean because she felt that was a vacation. Other women would go up to the bungalow colony. Now, what would happen is school would be out on June 30th in New York, and someplace around the 12th of September or the 14th or something, you'd go back to school. So you had a 10-week throw. So they would rent the bungalow colony not for 10 weeks, they would rent it for more. And the bungalow colony would open up around Easter if you wanted to go up there and stay Easter. But I don't think anybody really did that because upstate New York was colder because it was elevated high, and nobody would go up there in April. It was too cold. Nobody wanted to bother. But if you wanted to start going up there in May on the weekends, you could go up for the weekend. It was a 100-mile drive to get up there. And you would run about an hour and a half because it was a throughway. It was, you'd run 75. So you were about an hour and a half trip up there. And there wasn't much to do up there. They had, little cities there, or more like big villages where you could go to a supermarket or a hardware store. There wasn't much of anything. They had a few restaurants that really, like pizza places and sandwich, and people didn't really frequent that. The hotels had the restaurants, and so some of the women wanted the whole 10 weeks, so they got a bungalow colony, and they had them with 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. They were ground level little shacks. Normally, they didn't have air conditioning back then. Maybe some did. Some I think put a window unit in. Some of them would rent that bungalow colony, that same bungalow, year after year after year, and they put their own furniture in it and stuff like that. So they would, you would be friendly with the owner, and they know you'd rent it every year, and you'd send them a check, and it was closed basically. There was nothing going on in the bungalow colony until school was out, which was the end of June. And sometimes the month of June was busy, even May, but they'd go up for the weekend, and they'd go up there and get the bungalow cleaned up and get it ready and bring stuff up there and all that stuff. And they had a refrigerator up there, and people had a freezer, and there were supermarkets you could go to and buy your food. So the father would be working. They would drive up there, and the father would leave him there and go, maybe spend the night and then go back to work. I'll be right back, and I'll finish this with you. This was the way of life. So the father would drive him up there, leave him there for the summer, and he would go back to work. And then Friday evening, he'd get off work and he'd drive up to the Catskills, which wasn't that big a trip. And then he'd have dinner there with the family. He'd visit, he'd sleep there Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday morning he'd wake up, so he sleeps in Saturday and Sunday, and Sunday afternoon or evening he drives back, and then he goes to work Monday morning. So it was a big sacrifice for the father because he's all alone. He's doing all the cooking in the house and everything. It is, but some of the guys did it. It was not rare. And the kids would be up there for 10 weeks playing. They had usually a ball field for the kids. They had a camp usually. A camp. They hired 2 or 3 kids to work as counselors and basically babysitters. They didn't have any very good camp facilities or anything like that to do up there. And there wasn't much to do. The only thing you were doing is they always had that swimming pool. Some of them had a lake. They were on a lake shared. Usually there was a lot of places on the lake. And then they had the Orthodox Jews went up there too. And they'd wear the black coats and the white, and they'd run around. And they'd buy cars that looked like police cars because they didn't want to be accused of being vain. I don't think they do that anymore. They buy stripped cars. I think they stopped doing that. And that was a way of life for, it was, as far as I know, it was going on in the 20s and the 30s. And it lasted into the 70s. So it was a big era, a big era. It was a big thing. Once my grandfather took me up to the hotel he went to, and I didn't know anything about it. I went up there. Now, my grandfather was wealthy, and he had all sorts of friends there, like dozens and dozens. They knew who he was, and he got the same junky room, though. It was we shared a bedroom. It had a sink and it had a common bathroom and shower out in the hall. He did the same thing. On reflection, they might not have had single bath units there. I don't know. I don't know. But this was, I think, a much nicer place he went to. Except it didn't have a pool. The people were swimming in the lake. And I didn't like that because the fish would come around and bang into you. The lake was full of fish. And I don't know if they were trying to bite you, but nothing that could hurt you, but they'd nudge into you. I hated it. And then they had the boat, the rowboats you could row. And then they had shows at night, and they had movies, and they had, the standard, you played tetherball. There wasn't much of anything going on, There wasn't. Sometimes they took the camp, they would take the kids into the city and you'd go bowling. It was pretty boring, really. It was just being, it was just to get out of the city because the city was hot and there wasn't much to do. And you just kind of mope around. And at night, all the kids would come out and, you'd all get together at the schoolyard and hang out. But during the day, it was pretty boring. There wasn't much. A lot of kids would go to the beach. One summer, I tried going to a country club in New York. Well, not a country club, a swimming pool place. They had this, it was called Castle Hill in the Bronx. They had a swimming pool that was the size of about 10 Olympic pools. It was amazing. I never saw anything like this. It was huge. And I went a few times. I didn't like it. There was nothing to do there except go in the water, So a little bit of Jewish folklore, lighten the levy, put some more lightness into it other than the war. So here we sit waiting for the war. We're wondering if we're going to be in the fight, how bad Israel's going to get damaged. A certain percentage of their missiles get through. The last time in June, I think it was 13 or 17% got through, something like that. About 15%. I don't know what it's going to be this time. It could be worse or it could be better. We got the iron beam, but none of us ever saw it in action. But the government tells us that it works. It's been tested. They would not tell us that unless it works and it has been tested. So I'm rather certain it works very effectively and has been tested, but we don't know how many they have. They could have one or they could have 87. I don't know. They don't want to tell us. And that's okay. They're allowed to have their war secrets, that's for sure. They got to protect us, so we'll see what happens. I don't know. They're not going to activate the infantry. What's the infantry going to do? I don't know how it's going to end. I have a feeling Iran's not going to attack us. And I have a feeling this thing's likely going to get out of hand because Iran's not going to surrender. And once they start attacking the American bases, they're going to probably kill soldiers. And that's going to get out of Trump's hands. And then once they start attacking the other countries, then the other countries will never talk to Trump again if he doesn't wipe Iran out. So it's a pretty crazy thing. Let's see what the price of gold and silver is now. It's escalating like crazy. I never would have thought without the wars it would get this high. I don't even know what's going to happen with the wars yet. We'll find out in a few days. Wow. Whoa, boy, guys, this has gone crazy. Right now, silver's $109.39. Gold is $5,091 and the war hasn't started. And platinum's up to $28.80. Platinum's going in on 3,000. And palladium is rhodium. Rhodium is $10,000 an ounce. So one of these crazy things already hit up there. Okay, let's see what the highs were. That's what it's selling for now. Let's get the highs. What are the latest all-time high prices for gold and silver? Be precise, please. This will take a few seconds because I sent it on a precise mission. Let's wait and see what it brings up. This is one of the AIs that I think uses my computer to research stuff. So that's good if you want to keep everything kind of private or something. It doesn't use another server or something like that. I saw in one place as it's scanning $5,111. But let's wait till it finishes. What? Well, yeah, it's coming in at $5,110 for gold and $110.11 for silver. Crazy. I mean, silver's $110 and gold is $51. I mean, this is nuts. There's no confidence in the governments of the world, and that's why these prices are so high. They don't believe the governments are any good, and their money's no good. So that's why this stuff creeps up there. It's crazy. So what's going to happen when the war starts is, I mean, that depends how long the war runs, but if it runs long enough, like a month, I wouldn't be shocked to see 7,500 to 10,000 on gold, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 200 on silver. All right, so that's what I got for today. Let me see if we got any questions. I gotta use this new. I gotta get back. So annoying using this. The way YouTube changed things is horrible. Let's see what I got here. Yeah, it's called the Judge's Gavel. I remember that. Yeah. That's, you see, you live here long enough, you forget words like gavel, because the chances you're using a word like gavel in Israel is like zero. The judges don't use those in Israel, I believe. I've never seen it. Somalia, no. I'm not from Somalia. Why would you think that? Wouldn't I be black if I was from Somalia? Okay. No, I didn't see any questions. So we're just waiting. So the Israeli authorities seem to be implying this weekend. And the way I'm seeing things develop in Israel, I don't think we're going to be in the fight. And I don't think we're going to be attacked. So, like I told you, Iran, if we're attacking Iran, Iran has a vested interest in attacking us to stop our attacks. But if we're not attacking Iran, they're going to focus on the other countries and try to get them to stop the attack. If they start up with us, they get no gain. Okay, so they've caused damage in Israel. How does that help them? It doesn't. When that starts sending fleets of 20 F-35s and F-15s and F-16s round the clock to bomb them 24/7, what do they get out of that? No, they just get destroyed quicker. So Iraq is going to get in on it, and that could affect us. But again, they may not bother with us. if we're not attacking them, but we're probably going to take the radar out in Iraq and Syria. So we got free passage to Iran if we have to get there. So that's probably going to happen. Iraq without Iran fighting us is a joke. The missile damage from Iraq would be extremely minimal, if anything, and the drone damage, again, extremely minimal. So we have no real downside of much of anything with Iraq. Yemen, what are they going to do? Shoot a missile and 2 or 3 drones a day at us, and we just take it down? I mean, that's about all that they're going to do. But they're going to get it also, because they're going to close the Red Sea, and the UK and America and other countries are going to go in there and bomb them. See, Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen cannot do anything about our aircraft. They can't get our aircraft. They can attack our ships, but not our aircraft. So they're going to get it if they join the fight. And then so will Iraq. So we'll have to see what happens. So anyway, let me put a prayer out for all of us. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers in our households. I pray that we have your strength, stamina, and endurance coming from you, that we get that, and we have your healing and recuperative power flowing through us, that we don't get sick or hurt, and we continue to heal in all the places we need healing. And I pray that all of us and our animals and pets would be safe and secure and happy, healthy, and whole. I pray we all have good sleep, and we have adequate finances and have money left over. And I pray that we, if we need jobs, we can find jobs, good jobs. If we need customers or clients for our businesses, we get those as needed. And I pray that we're not discriminated against by any government or organization of any sort or people. I pray we're not picked on, we're not robbed, ripped off, scammed, or frauded by governments or people, and we don't have anything robbed from us. And if we order things, we get them delivered in a swift, prompt way without damage or theft. And I pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and I pray that this government be ended here in Israel, so we could have a good government, i.e. the 2 witnesses, a godly government, not this garbage we've been subject to. And I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I did that. And I pray we understand the scriptures better, and I do better videos. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And you can, join in and agree with this prayer. If I wish you would, if you're a believer. And that's it, guys. I hope you got something out of this. I'm keeping very, very close tabs on the war. I'm watching very closely about equipment being moved around. And if I see some not so significant stuff, it goes on Telegram. And if I see something that's really significant, I'll put it on a special live stream. But right now I haven't seen it, and I'm going to be watching very carefully every day and night. Okay, so I'm out, and I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. Thanks.